Okay, so in the comments, I got a recent question about what I would have preferred to have done differently when setting up the Earthship. Now, I didn't actually build this Earthship, I did build some of the systems. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover maybe one or two mistakes I made, but also what I would have preferred to see done differently by the people who did build the Earthship. So, we're going to go with that, and here we go.
Now, this one is just one of those things that just makes you scratch your head. This is the inside of my shower. Now, there's a couple things about my shower I don't like. One is the fact that you can see where the shower head is. This is when you're standing in front of the shower head, you don't have much room because this is the shallow direction in the shower. Whereas if they had put it on this, and I actually have had, this doesn't work right now, but I have had a shower head over here, one of those handheld jobs, and that works much better. Unfortunately, it was a very cheap one and it broke. The other thing about this shower that I can't imagine making this mistake, but if you look at this wall, this is actually sharp. It's so rough that I've actually rubbed against this with my elbow and drawn blood. This is the inside of my shower. Just a very, very poor and I would say stupid decision to do this on the inside of a shower. You make the inside of your shower such that it doesn't draw blood if you happen to rub against it. So that's something I wish was different and will probably change at some point. But for now, I'm just careful when I shower. Something else that I wish was different in my bathroom. This is the expansion tank for the water. And it's too small. You get the pump coming on far too often because the size of this tank is so small. If it was a bigger tank, it would have the pump cycling on much fewer times during, say a shower or when you're running the dishwasher or the laundry. It just causes the pump to have to come on too often. So I would say a larger expansion tank would be another one of those things that I would like to see. I don't really have the ability to change these in another room, but if it would have been nice if this was bigger. Okay, moving on. This is the kitchen planter. This is the Graywater treatment planter for the kitchen. You can see that there's a lot of ivy growing in it. Most of it's kind of grown over the side, reaching for the sun. And these branches you see in here that look like dead wood, it's actually what it is. This is just stalks that actually didn't grow in this planter. They were put in there. I was hoping that the ivy would grow up on it. It didn't really work out. Maybe this winter when the sun comes further in, it will. But for right now, the ivy sort of seems to want to migrate across the floor. That's really not what I want to talk about, though. This Graywater treatment planter handles all the water from the kitchen. So the kitchen sink and underneath, actually, I don't think I've ever shown this in a video, underneath the cabinet, there is in fact a dishwasher. The clean dishes I have to empty. And that empties, along with the sink, into this Graywater treatment planter, which actually works really well. Have had no problem with it. However, New Mexico, in their infinite wisdom, has decided that gray water from the kitchen is now considered black water. Shame on New Mexico. And that means that you are required to have a septic system for your kitchen water, kitchen gray water. You're not required to have a septic system just for the bathroom. The composting toilet is certainly adequate, and they don't require that you have a septic to deal with that. And the water from the shower, from the laundry, and from the bathroom sink, not considered black water. So just fine there. It's just the kitchen. So that's a problem. And it would be nice if this house had a septic system to deal with that. And it's unfortunate that New Mexico decided to make that change. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that is the law since I think 2013 here in New Mexico. So that's another thing I would have liked to see different in this house. But unfortunately, there's really no way to change that. So it is what it is. And since I'm not planning to sell this house, it's probably fine. But something to think about if somebody's building an Earthship. That is a requirement in New Mexico at least. So keep that in mind. Now, staying with the kitchen a little bit here, the other thing I'd like to have seen done differently when this house was built is the plumbing for the kitchen. I'm not sure where the pipes go for the kitchen sink. They seem to go under the floor. They don't go up into the ceiling, and there's no pipes going through the walls. So they must have been embedded in the concrete under the tile floor, which obviously needs to be swept right now. So that means that if there's a leak or a pipe that breaks, there's just no way to get at it. So that would have been something else I'd like to have seen done differently here. Another thing to keep in mind when talking about Graywater treatment planters here, this is the front planter. This is the planter that deals with all the water from the shower, the bathroom sink, the laundry, and it's just me in the house. So just with my own water usage, there's not enough to actually feed all these plants enough water. So I actually have, and I'll show you here. Excuse the mess, I just emptied my truck. Sold my Blazer recently. So I have this timer, and this timer, which is pretty dusty, comes on every, I think, 6 hours for a couple of minutes, and allows the water to flow out through soaker hose, which you can see there, and the green hose that feeds another soaker hose. And that waters the plants in the planter, because if it was left just to the gray water coming from the bathroom and the laundry, it wouldn't be enough. So that's something to keep in mind, when you're designing a system. How much usage is there going to be on that water? And is there going to be enough so that you're not going to have to supplement it for the plants that you want to have growing in your Graywater treatment planters? Another thing to think about when talking about the water system and specifically the rainwater harvesting that happens here and in most Earthships, the way that the system works here, you can see there's a waterfall right there that comes down. Water comes down from the roof and comes into this indoor cistern. The way this is supposed to work is that the water comes off the roof and carries with it whatever comes off of the roof, dust or bird droppings, whatever, and that comes in and is supposed to settle out into the indoor cistern, which then once it reaches its level, will overflow into the outdoor cistern, which is out there, you can't probably see. And so the idea is that the sediment that's washed off the roof settles in the indoor cistern into the bottom of the indoor cistern, and then the relatively cleaner water goes out into the outdoor cistern. And the open top cistern here is not a great idea in my opinion. I had issues with algae, and then you can see that in the water, I have put, this is duckweed, you can see on the surface of the water. And this is my solution for preventing algae. This blocks the light from getting past the surface of the water. And it works fairly well, but there's still an issue with evaporation. So in New Mexico, humidity being very low most of the time, there's a significant amount of evaporation that occurs, and the water level does noticeably go down pretty quickly because of that. There is obviously some water that's being absorbed by the plants, which are meant to also help clean the water and remove any nutrients that are in the water that might qualify as contaminants. And the duckweed does that as well. But in general, I think a closed-topped cistern is probably better than the open-top cistern. Also, there's a potential for, animals or insects to get into it. Mice can fall in there if you've got mice in the house, or the little geckos or lizards that are around that can get into the house can fall into it and die, and that can also be a contaminant issue as well. So I would say an open-top cistern is not the best idea. Something else I have mentioned on previous videos, especially the flood video that I had a few weeks ago or a month and a half ago here. This house is actually dug down into the lot, so you can see the grade difference between where the house sits, and it goes up all the way around the house is higher. So that potentially presents an issue with flooding. So that's an issue, and that's one of the reasons why we had the issue here with the flash flood that occurred and ended up in my house. And you can check out that video if you like. There's a couple of videos about that. The other thing outside we can look at is these windows. Now you can see that these are angled windows. And I would prefer completely vertical windows. And whatever gain you might get out of having these angled windows from, additional solar thermal gain, I would say is offset by the fact that these angled windows require much more maintenance. These leak. With the angle that they present to the sky, the rainwater hits them directly, and they do leak. It's very difficult to get them to stop leaking. And if they were vertical, then they wouldn't have that issue with gravity helping to pull the water in and try to find the spots to get through all of the seals that might have cracked or over time deteriorated to some degree. And they are very difficult to keep up with as far as stopping the little leaks that occur here and there. And fortunately, being New Mexico, it doesn't rain a lot, so it's not a huge issue for me. But I would have preferred vertical windows rather than the angled ones. The other thing is the outdoor cistern. Would have liked to see something that was not exposed as much as this one is. It's a pretty good sized cistern, but it's even though it has a large volume of water in it, it does freeze in the wintertime and cause some problems. Sometimes I do have issues with the pipes freezing in it as well. If this was completely underground, that probably wouldn't be an issue. You can hear also this morning, this is on a timer, but I have an ozone generator that runs, and I think you can see the ripples in the water from the bubbles as they come up from the air stone where the ozone's coming up. And that helps to keep the water clean. I highly recommend doing something like that. And you can see this guy on the top. That is a transmitter. It's a ultrasonic level indicator that transmits to a receiver inside the house so that I can see what the water level is. But as for the cistern itself, it would have been nice to see something that was buried under the ground. You can see I have some damage here in the cement on the top I need to repair. And I painted the top of this black. It's mostly wearing off now, so that in the wintertime it will absorb some sun and heat up, and I'll have less of an issue with it freezing. There's also a heater in the cistern as well that I can turn on, but it's just sort of a stopgap solution. It's something I'm going to have to address at some point, but it would have had better luck if this cistern was completely buried rather than being exposed on the top like this. Something else I made a video about previously, and you can check out on the channel, is that there used to be on the side of the house here a solar hot water heater, which turned out to not be a great idea. because it would freeze in the wintertime when it got cold, and it wouldn't make a lot of hot water when it was cold because the tank itself was outside. So you can go and look at those videos about the hot water heater solution, and I did change over. You can see those 4 panels there. That's for the hot water. So check that out. Outdoor water tank for hot water, maybe not the best plan, especially in areas like this where it gets down to, well into the single digits in the wintertime. And over here you can also see this is a significant level change in the terrain here. This is where the water came down, ended up going into my house when we had the flood. So that's another thing that, I've tried to address with the trench here. Eventually I'm going to have to clean this up. I'm actually planning on putting a room on this side of the house, so that'll change at some point as well. But that just shows you the challenge here, trying to keep water out because the house is so much lower than the surrounding terrain. So another thing to keep in mind, and this is not really related to the way the house was originally constructed, this is actually my fault. That wind turbine is about 25, maybe coming up towards 30 feet off the ground. As you can see, the level of the ground is there, and it's not high enough. This is an 1800 watt turbine, and you never see more than a few hundred watts off of it. Right now, at the speed it's spinning now, it's making no power. So a little bit higher would be much better, and it would be much more apt to reach closer to its full potential if the turbine was actually, I'd say 10-20 feet higher than it is. Now when we're talking about rain harvesting, you can see I've put a gutter at the bottom of the solar array. I put them on both the strings on this side of the house, and they didn't survive the wind. I'm going to have to do something different. But this was an effort to, guys, knock it off. This was an effort to increase the surface area for rain harvesting here. Now I've also got on the cabin, guys, please. On the cabin, I've also got gutters that deliver water to a tank that's underneath the white tarp over there, and that's to provide me with outdoor water. That I drain in the wintertime because it freezes solids, so I transfer that water into the house, into the indoor cistern in the wintertime. But another effort to increase the surface area for rain harvesting because it's dry out here. And some summers there's an issue with not having quite enough water. So the more surface area you have, the better you are.
So that's pretty much everything I could think of to talk about relating to what I'd like to see different about my Earthship. If anybody has any suggestions on anything else that maybe should be changed, I encourage you to leave a comment. Thanks for watching.